Tonight, the Philadelphia Phillies start probably the biggest series of the entire season. We have a 3-game set with the New York Mets, and the Phillies play 7 of their next 10 games against the New York Mets. So despite the 8-game lead in the National League, things can get very hairy over the next 10 days if we don't show up and play some big baseball against the New York Metropolitans. And I do believe that this 3-game set that's coming up is far more important than the 4 games that they're going to play at Citi Field next week, because the Mets come into Philadelphia if they win 2 out of 3 and they make it a 7-game lead in the standings. Or maybe they even sweep us and they bring it down to a 5-game series. Now they have the momentum going into next week with that 4-game series next week. So the Phillies got to come out here, win 2 out of 3 against the Mets at home, make this a 9-game lead in the standings going into next week, because you have a 7-game road trip, including 4 against these Mets coming up before you swing back home for the last week of the season. No lead is safe, as we know, going all the way back to 2007. You can be up by a week's worth of games with 2 weeks left and lose. So you got to show up and play these games. But before we get into what's to come, let's talk about what has happened. Welcome back into the Cherry Pinstripes podcast. I am Shelfie, your host. We are down the stretch here in September baseball. Postseason's right around the corner. And Nick Castellanos, Bryce Harper, and the Phils got themselves in some drama over the Rays series this week. We all know about it. We've all seen it. Our guy Jimmy did a breakdown of it. Nick Castellanos gets hit by a pitch. Pretty much all hell breaks loose from that point on. They do get the sweep in this Rays series, but I want to talk about the moment, the incident, because I think this could be a momentum, like a bring the group together situation for the Phillies. They came out and won that next game. The 8th inning, Phillies and the Rays were going back and forth in the second game of this set. 8th inning, Bryson Stott grounds out to first base on a weird play, and then with 2 outs, the Phillies went on a little bit of a run. Brandon Marsh with a walk, Cody Clemens followed that up with a double, and that's when the Braves brought Edwin Uceta into the game with his 0.79 ERA. Stevenson hits a double, Kennedy hits a single down the line, Trey Turner hits a cutter out for a 2-run homer, and then Bryce Harper hits a double down the line, which is where we got to the Nick Castellanos hit by pitch. As Jimmy noted on his breakdown, for those of you that haven't seen it, Edwin was flaring his thumb on his changeup. That was the tell, and it was very obvious once it got pointed out. The Phillies weren't chasing anything, and he got frustrated. And this was one of those moments, as Bryce was screaming over and over again, we don't do that at this level. His ERA doubled in this inning. I understand the frustration, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I love seeing the fire from this team. I love seeing Matt Strahm running out on the field in street clothes, fresh out of the shower. Like, this is exactly what this team needed going into this weekend series with the Mets to fire them up, because they rode this momentum right into the next game. They won, like I said, they won that next game the next day. They swept the Rays. Zach Wheeler looked great. He's really trying to put the pressure on Chris Sale at the top of that Cy Young leaderboard. So I feel good about this. I feel really good about this. I love everything that happened here. The Phillies really in no way, shape, or form were in the wrong, or did they look bad? I know there were some people online doing the whole Bryce Harper was running at him and then he waited for somebody to get in between him. He was just fired up and yelling. I don't think he at any point really had any. This is someone who we have seen charge a 6'4", 230-pound Hunter Strickland on live television. He's certainly not scared. He was just fired up. And it's a great look for this Phillies team. Great look for the Phillies team. They got the sweep against the Rays. They also took 2 out of 4 in that Marlins split over the weekend. Didn't love that, though. You win the first 2 games of that Marlins series, and then they drop the next 2, which, again, is a huge reason why I feel like this Rays series and this moment where they kind of all got on the same page and got fired up together, it's kind of big, because the end of that Marlins series left a sour taste in my mouth. We got a Christopher Sanchez gem in the first game of this Tampa Bay series. The second game of this series was the Brandon Lau home run. Brandon Lau robbed her. Sorry, it was the first game of the series. I'm sorry. Johan Rojas almost robbed the Brandon Lau home run at the end of the game. Brandon Lau tied it on a solo shot in the 9th off of Carlos Estevez, and Johan Rojas had it in his glove, but his arm banged on the wall and the ball fell on the other side. They did end up winning that game in the bottom of the 9th on a Cody Clemens walk-off. Game 2. We know all about it. The highlight of Game 2 in that series, really, though, Kyle Schwarber, now the MLB leader. 14 leadoff home runs, passing Alfonso Soriano. Trey Turner went yard in that series. Bryce Harper, who has a home run drought right now of a month. He hasn't homered in a month. He had a home run overturned. That's got to be the worst feeling in the world. You haven't homered in 3.5 weeks and you get one overturned. You got to go back out to second base. But nonetheless, Estevez, who gave up that home run to Brandon Lau, did get the win in that first game of the series. And then he bounced back in game 3 of the series and got the save, cleaning things up for Zach Wheeler. So good overall set of games against the Marlins and the Rays. You end up winning 5 out of 7. They won 5 out of 7 out of the Florida games. And Kyle Schwarber, we said it. He set now the record, the leadoff home run record in Major League Baseball history. But Kyle Schwarber's on a 40 homer race right now, and things are going to get interesting. This may be the first time anyone's talked about this. I haven't really heard anyone go into it. We got the postseason coming up. I know we have our World Series hopes, but I will say we need to seriously start having conversations about adding a year or two to Kyle Schwarber's contract, because next season's the last year. And it's whether this year ends abruptly or they go and they win the whole thing, this team right now is built for long-term success. The reason Dave Dombrowski hasn't done the typical Dave Dombrowski that you've seen in Detroit and Boston, Dave Dombrowski's trying to get rid of his own stigmas. He's going to trade everyone, win one, and leave them in a dumpster fire. He hasn't traded anyone. He's retooled. He's sharpening the knives. He's loading the clip over and over again in Philadelphia, and he hasn't dumped the farm yet. He's trying to sustain long-term sustainable success, and I think keeping Kyle Schwarber around for a couple extra years now is going to be huge for this team. He's only got 1 year left on the contract. Maybe you're re-signing him at high value this winter if you want to add a year or two. Most likely you're going to see him finish out this contract next season, and then, but, if I'm Kyle Schwarber, what he's done the first 3 years of this deal, if the Phillies want to throw him an extra $50 million, tack on 2 or 3 years on this contract, I don't think he would be opposed to it, and that is something I'd like to see this team at least dip their toes in the water come winter time. Now, for the rest of this season, the biggest question mark here down the stretch, I think we have 2, maybe 3 more starts left out of the 5th spot in this rotation. What are they going to do with it? Because unfortunately, I was very excited for Seth Johnson. It was 10-0 in the second inning. It was 10-0 in the second inning. Thankfully, I was at a baby shower, so I didn't have to sit there and watch through that entire one, that blowout loss to the Marlins with Seth Johnson on the mound. We've seen Colby Allard come up and look good in stints. We've even seen the Phillies recently. They ran Orion Kerkering out as an opener. Maybe they do that as a spot start here down the stretch. But like I said, every game here is going to matter over these next 2.5 weeks, especially if they drop a few to the Mets. Getting a win, maybe 2, from the back end of this rotation over the next week could be vital in sealing the deal. I believe the Phillies' magic number now is 8 to lock in the NL East. It may be 9. It is at single digits now. So the pitching staff has been great. Ranger Suarez dealing with a little bit of dead arm right now. This might actually be the most obvious case of dead arm. He clearly needs a little bit of time. Velo's down, which naturally means that spin rates are down. He's just giving up harder contact than usual. He doesn't look the same. I know we're in a struggle right now with the 5th spot in the rotation. We're 9. Okay, 9. Got confirmation. But 9 games is the magic number for the Phillies. But yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about the starting rotation. I'm not concerned about the starting rotation once we get into a playoff series. We got Wheeler at the top. We got Noel at the top. Christopher Sanchez is now reliable. Hopefully Ranger Suarez can look better by the time we get there, or else we might be having a Ranger Suarez, Christopher Sanchez conversation come playoff time. But for right now, sealing the deal, locking this in, or even, looking ahead into the offseason and spring training of next year, who's going to step up for this Phillies team pitching-wise outside of the 2 dogs at the top of the rotation right now? Because they're going to need a couple more wins from the middle and the bottom of this rotation to seal the deal. New segment we're going to add this week. We got our new segment, Dog of the Week. Shelby and the Cherry Pinstripes Dog of the Week, our first ever Dog of the Week. Come on. It's Nick Castellanos. Not only does he go into that post-game press conference all fired up after the drama with the Rays, of course he comes out the next day and hits a 2-run homer in his first at-bat. Because that's what Nick Castellanos does. He's a dog. And that's why he's our first ever Dog of the Week. And also note, Nick Castellanos is becoming a huge fan favorite in Philadelphia. Huge fan favorite. And I was concerned when Nick came here because I know he's a fiery personality. He's a streaky player. Sometimes we get a little mean towards our streaky players, but Nick has fit in great in Philadelphia. He had an autograph signing last night after the drama, which I'm sure Phillies fans brought up and we're talking about nonstop. But, I saw multiple tweets last night that Nick Castellanos stayed for, an hour after that autograph signing, past the allotted time slot, took a ton of extra pictures with kids. He's the kind of guy who brings his family, brings Liam to the autograph signings, makes it a family event. And I love that, man. It's a testament to this clubhouse. I had that experience personally with Bryce Harper. Not that it was a fan situation, but back in 2018 when Bryce Harper was the cover athlete for MLB 19, I got to go to the cover shoot. And going into that cover shoot, 2018 Bryce Harper, the stigma is kind of a douche. I'm not going to lie. Going into that day, I was like, I got to interview this guy. I hear Bryce is kind of a fiery guy. I don't know how. Nicest dude in the world. I have been adamant since 2018. Nicest guy in the world. He had a 4-hour shoot for the cover athlete. They told me that my interview slot got nixed because it ran too late. And Bryce stayed for an extra hour. Came out of the locker room, finished all of his interviews. Every person that was there, he gave them at least 5 minutes, bullshitting with everyone for 15, 20 minutes before he left. Nicest guy in the world. And it just seems like this Phillies team is full of those guys. Full of them. There's not a single guy on this team with a bad rep anymore. It's awesome. So we got a big slate of games. This Mets series coming up. I believe Aaron Nola is on the mound tonight to get things started. His last start against the Mets was a complete game shutout. Would like to see him go out and have another big start. Back end of the year, Aaron Nola going into the postseason. So that is probably going to do it for us here today. Just a couple notes for you guys going into the weekend, some things to think about, keep in mind, look forward to as we go down the stretch. Kyle Schwarber is hunting for those 40 home runs. He's sitting at, I believe, 37. I think he's at 37 at the moment, so might even be at 35. Don't quote me on that. It's either 35 or 37, but either way, he's got plenty of time to get to that 40 mark. He's trailing Marcell Ozuna and Shohei Ohtani in the National League ranks for the home run race. We also have Johan Rojas, who has been hitting great for the last 2 months. He is at 35. Again, confirmation. Shout out to my guy Andrew in the producer chair. Coming through. So Kyle Schwarber is 5 shy of the 40 mark. Needs 5 homers to get to 40. Johan Rojas has been hot. Our guy Trey Turner, who's been in the batting title race, not going to win that one. Luis Arraez got hot again, and it's now a 20-point gap. But Trey Turner's sitting at 299 right now. Can he get that 300 mark? Can he get to that 300 pace by the end of the season? And you never know. He is someone who can get absolutely scorching hot, just like Luis Arraez, but he's in that top 3. And Bryce Harper is currently sitting at 39 doubles. So Bryce Harper is 1 double shy of 40. He's in the homer drought right now, but he is still being a productive piece in the middle of this lineup. It would be nice to see him start getting the ball in the seats, though, going into October. That's going to do it for me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I hope the Phillies take care of business here against the Mets. We got Aaron Nola tonight. We have a 3-game set against the Brewers after that, which will be the start of a 7-game road trip. So you got 3 at home against the Mets, 3 in Milwaukee, 4 in Citi Field against the Mets again, and then you come back home for your last 3 home games against the Cubs, 1 day off on the 26th, and you finish the season in Washington against the Nationals for a 3-game set before the playoffs. So you're going. You're going. Okay, we got Cherry Pinstripes in the building for that Washington series at the end of the year. You guys have a good one. Enjoy your weekend. Go Phils, Schwarber, Harper, Turner, Castellanos. Let's stay hot. Let's hit those marks. See you in the next one.